The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with light and shadow as the tall windows looked out over the shining city that floated above the clouds of the central world, and the seats around the long curved table were filled with the leaders and envoys of dozens of alien species, each one wearing the colors of their homeworld and the signs of their rank. Yet their faces and eyes all carried the same thing, a heavy sense of worry and fear. At the center of the table, a single large screen showed a map of the galaxy, and a small red circle blinked near the outer rim, far away from any safe trade route, far away from any known colony. And this was the place the Council had been talking about for the last 3 long hours, and no one wanted to go there. The red circle marked a dead star system, a place the Council had named Arcanes after the first scout ship to enter and never return, and for over 20 cycles the signal from that system had kept repeating over and over the same strange pattern of voice-like sound that no one could translate. Some said it sounded like crying, others said it was like a whisper in the dark asking for help, but the records told a darker truth. Ships from 4 different species had tried to reach the source of the signal, some of them warships, some of them science vessels, some of them private explorers. None had come back whole. A few limped home as broken wrecks with no living crew aboard, and the rest vanished without a trace, as if they had been swallowed by the empty dark. The Council had discussed this many times before, but now the situation had changed. The signal had grown stronger in the last month. It was now reaching trade routes. It was even interfering with long-range communications, and some feared it was a weapon calling more and more ships into a trap, and if they did nothing, the danger might spread to the inner worlds. One by one, the Council offered the mission to the great powers of the galaxy. The scaled warriors of Zathrak refused without hesitation, saying the risk was not worth the reward. The winged clans of Area declined, as well, saying they would not send their ships into cursed space. The silent thinkers of Rel only shook their heads and said the logic was clear: no return meant no chance of success. Each time the offer was made, the answer was the same. The alien leaders spoke of honor and duty, but their voices carried the weight of fear, and none would take the task, for every species knew the stories of what had happened in Arcanes, and no captain wanted their name written in the list of the lost. The chamber grew quiet after the last refusal, and for a long moment only the sound of the wind outside the tall windows could be heard. Then one of the Council aides stepped forward with a data slate in hand and spoke in a clear voice: "There is one more candidate left on the list, a young species from the third arm of the spiral humans of Earth." A ripple of soft voices moved around the table as the alien leaders exchanged looks, some with amusement, some with disbelief. The humans had only been part of the Council for a short time. They were still considered newcomers, still learning the ways of the galaxy. Yet in that short time, they had earned a reputation for strange courage and a stubborn will to face danger where others would not. The request was sent to Earth, and within a single rotation, the reply came back, not from a Council diplomat, not from a military commander, but from a man in a plain uniform with a small badge that simply read Captain Elias Ward. His voice was calm and steady as he read the mission details. His eyes moved across the warnings, the casualty reports, the list of failed expeditions, and the possible threats from unknown sources. The other Council members watched his face on the screen, waiting for his reaction, some expecting him to frown or to hesitate, but instead his mouth curved slightly into what humans called a smile, and then he spoke 2 short words that seemed to echo through the chamber. That's all. For a moment, no one spoke. The meaning of the words was simple, yet the tone in his voice was strange, almost amused, as if the danger that had frozen the most powerful fleets in the galaxy was nothing more than a small challenge to be met and overcome. And the alien leaders found themselves unsure if this human was brave or insane or both. The Council leader, a tall figure from the crystalline worlds, leaned forward and asked if the human captain had understood the risks of the mission and the losses that had come before, and the man nodded, saying he had read every line and seen every image, and still the answer from Earth was yes. In the days that followed, the Council chambers were filled with quiet talk about the decision. Some said the humans were reckless and would only add another wreck to the cursed system. Others whispered that perhaps the humans had some unknown strength, some secret reason to believe they could succeed where so many had failed. And there were even those who thought that maybe the humans did not truly understand the danger at all. But the truth was far simpler on Earth. The call for volunteers had gone out, and within hours there were more names than the mission could take. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, even deep space miners sent their applications, many of them writing in their own words why they wanted to go. Some spoke of duty, some of adventure, and some simply said, why not? From the alien point of view, this was madness. The danger was clear, and the history of failure was long, yet the humans seemed to see the mission as a test to be passed, not a trap to be feared. And when asked why they were willing to go, one volunteer had laughed and said, because everyone else said no, and that means someone has to say yes. Back in the council chamber, the final vote was taken, and the mission was given to Earth. The official order carried the seal of the council, and the mission profile was sent to the human fleet for preparation across the galaxy. Eyes turned toward the newcomers who had just accepted a task that had been turned down by every other species. The feeds carried the story, the comm channels buzzed with talk, and in quiet corners of many worlds, people asked the same question: what will the humans do? And in the long, silent halls of the Arcani's system, where the cold, dead stars shone on the drifting bones of old ships, the strange signal continued to call across the dark waves of space, its pattern unchanged, its whisper endless, waiting for the next ship to answer. And far away, a human captain sat at his desk, looking over star charts with a small smile on his face, ready to give the only answer his kind seemed to know when the galaxy told them. Something was impossible, that's all. The human captain sat inside the main briefing room of the council ship that had been sent to Earth orbit, its silver hull reflecting the light of the blue planet below. And inside the room sat not only Captain Elias Ward, but also the envoys of 3 other species who had been ordered to explain the mission details in person. Each one carried a thick set of files with warning marks in bright red and black, and the air inside the room felt heavy as if the words they carried had weight. The first envoy was from the Scaled Warriors of Zathrak, a tall figure covered in green and bronze plates of armor, his voice deep and slow. As he spoke, he told the human captain of the cursed system called Arcanis. He spoke of ships that had entered its borders and never returned. He spoke of wrecks drifting with no life inside, and of strange burns across their hulls, marks no one could match to any known weapon. He said the place was not just dangerous, it was evil, and that even the bravest of his kind refused to go there. The second envoy was from the winged clans of Aria, her feathers bright silver and her eyes sharp. She described the sound of the signal that came from the Dead Star system. She said it was not a normal call for help, it was more like a voice whispering to the mind. It spoke in words no one understood, but it made even strong pilots feel cold in their hearts. She warned that the closer a ship got to the source, the more the voice seemed to know the names of the crew. She told him of one Aryan ship that had turned back too late, and how the crew started to fight each other before they could escape, and how only one survived. The third envoy was from the silent thinkers of Rel, their bodies smooth and pale like carved stone, and their voice soft, yet clear. They gave no long story. They only said the logic was simple: no vessel had succeeded, no vessel had returned, and if humans went, they would become part of the same pattern of loss. Captain Elias listened to all 3 without interrupting, his hands folded on the table, his eyes moving from one speaker to the next, as if weighing every word. The envoys expected him to ask for more time, or to request more ships, or to reconsider entirely. But instead he asked them a single question: how long has the signal been active? The envoys looked at one another, and the Vrel answered, more than 20 council cycles, which is longer than your species has been in space travel. The captain nodded slowly, then asked his second question: what do we get if we succeed? For a moment, none of the envoys spoke. The Zathrak was the first to answer. The council has promised that any crew who can end the signal or recover its source will be given permanent rights to the system and all resources within it, as well as the highest honor that could be given to a fleet. The Aryan added that the knowledge itself could be valuable, for the signal was older than most known empires, and the Vrel simply said that success would mean changing the record of the impossible. The captain leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowed, not with fear, but with a look of thought, and then, without any grand speech, he said, "We will go," and that was the end of the meeting. News of the decision spread fast across the orbital station, and then through the council worlds. Many alien observers laughed at the idea, others shook their heads in disbelief, and some even placed private bets on how far the humans would make it before turning back. Yet among those who had seen humans before, there were quieter voices who said that perhaps they might succeed because they did not see danger the same way other species did. Back on Earth, the mission orders were sent to the Fleet Command Center, and the call for crew went out across the entire planet. The message was simple: a deep space mission into uncharted danger. Volunteers, only no guarantee of survival. Within hours, the list began to fill: soldiers who had served in long battle, scientists who had studied ancient ruins, explorers who had walked alone on alien worlds, engineers who loved to fix things that were broken, and even a few civilians who said they could not explain why, but they wanted to go. Each name was reviewed, and the final crew was chosen: 12 humans from different places and lives bound by the same strange calm in the face of the unknown. There was no long speech of farewell, no parade, only quiet preparations in the shipyards as the vessel that would carry them was fitted with the best equipment Earth could provide, its name painted in clear, bold letters across the hull: Vanguard. In the days before launch, some of the alien envoys visited the human docks to see the crew for themselves. They watched from high walkways as the humans moved across the decks, loading gear, checking systems, running drills, and laughing together, as if they were preparing for a normal trip rather than a journey into what every other species called curse space. One Aryan pilot, watching from above, whispered to another, "Do they not understand what they are walking into?" And the other replied, "Maybe they do, and that is what makes them dangerous." The night before launch, the captain walked alone through the silent corridors of Vanguard, his hand running along the cool metal of the walls. He stopped at the viewing deck, where the curve of Earth filled the window. Clouds drifting slowly over the blue oceans and green lands in the dark beyond the stars waited, each one a distant world with its own dangers and its own wonders. He thought of the envoys and their warnings. He thought of the crew who had volunteered without hesitation, and he thought of the whisper that waited in the dead system far away, and he smiled once again. In the council chambers the following day, the launch was set to be broadcast across the network so that every world could see the humans leave. Some said it was foolish pride, others said it was a show meant to frighten enemies. But when the image of the human ship filled the screens, lifting away from the docks and turning toward the dark edge of space, there was a strange feeling in the air across many worlds, a mix of doubt and curiosity, as if somewhere deep inside, even those who mocked them wanted to see what would happen. The journey would take them through long, empty reaches of space where no station and no ship traveled for months at a time. The charts showed nothing but cold stars and dust, but the crew of Vanguard moved with the same steady purpose they had on Earth, training together, sharing meals, running simulations, and listening to recordings of the signal. They would soon meet. The voice was strange, even through the speakers, a low sound that seemed to shift from word to word as if searching for the right language. Sometimes it almost sounded like a human voice, sometimes like nothing they could name. When the first alien observer assigned to watch them heard the signal, he turned pale and refused to listen again, saying it felt as if the voice was inside his mind. But the humans kept the recording playing during meals, and even while they worked, some of them said it was just noise, others said it was trying to talk to them, and one young engineer joked that maybe it was lonely and just wanted company. And so the human ship drew closer to the border of the Arcani system, while across the galaxy, the rest of the council watched and waited for the moment they would either turn back or vanish like the others before them. Yet if anyone had been on the bridge of Vanguard, they would have seen no fear, only quiet eyes looking forward and hands ready on the controls, and a captain who still carried the same small smile as the day he had first read the mission orders and said those two simple words that had started it all. That's all. The human ship Vanguard floated in low orbit above the blue and green curve of Earth, while inside its steel corridors the final preparations for the mission were underway, and the names of the 12 who would go were read out one by one, each name carrying with it a story of why they had stepped forward when so many others in the galaxy had stepped back. The first was Captain Elias Ward, whose calm voice and steady eyes had told the Galactic Council that the humans would take the mission without fear. He had served on deep space patrols and once led a rescue through a meteor storm that had destroyed 2 ships. Yet he spoke of these events as if they were no more than a long walk in the rain, and it was this quiet strength that made him the leader of the crew. The second was Lieutenant Marquez, an engineer whose hands could rebuild a ship engine in the dark using only parts from a broken drone. She had grown up near the orbital docks of Luna Station and could name every model of craft she had seen as a child. She had volunteered without hesitation, saying that if the mission ended in wreckage, she would rather be there to fix it than to watch from home. The third was Dr. Soren Vale, a scientist who had studied alien ruins on worlds so remote they had no names on the maps. He was calm in manner and spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight, and his knowledge of old signals and forgotten technology was unmatched among his peers. He had told the selection board that the signal from Arcanes might not be a trap at all, but something even stranger. The fourth was pilot Arlen Drax, whose hands on the controls could make a ship dance through asteroid fields where even automated guidance failed. He had flown in races across the moons of Juno and through storms around the rings of Satara, and his only question about the mission had been whether there would be room for sharp turns in the curse system. The fifth was Security Officer Talia Vorn, a soldier who had served in border wars with alien raiders and who had the quiet habit of standing near the door in every room she entered. She carried the weight of old battles in her eyes, yet she also carried the kind of focus that made her see danger before it arrived. Her reason for joining was simple: to protect those who could not protect themselves. The sixth was Ensign Cade Holloway, a communications specialist whose skill with signals and encryption had once exposed a pirate network hidden deep in council space. His love of strange sounds and puzzles had made him the first to request a personal copy of the Arcani signal, and he claimed he could already hear patterns that no one else noticed. The seventh was Navigator Ilya Morn, who could chart a course through the shifting currents of hyperspace with the ease of a painter brushing color across a canvas. She had guided colony ships to worlds where no other navigator dared to fly, and she spoke with quiet certainty that she would not lose the Vanguard no matter what the signal tried to do. The eighth was Medic Jonas Pell, a field doctor who had worked in war zones and plagued ships, and who had seen too much death to fear it now. He had a way of speaking that calmed those in pain, and he carried with him a small case of instruments older than himself, saying they had never failed him, even in the worst places. The ninth was Technician Ray Solon, a systems specialist who could take apart and rebuild the ship's core computer in less than a day. She had once overridden an entire station's security to stop an overheating reactor, and she viewed machines as living things that needed care and attention. Her reason for joining was that she wanted to see how the curse system would try to break their ship. The 10th was Gunnery Chief Bran Caro, whose skill with weapons was matched only by his patience in waiting for the right moment to use them. He had hunted pirate fleets and once destroyed a battleship with a single well-placed shot. He looked forward to meeting whatever was in Arcanes and seeing if it could be destroyed. The 11th was Specialist Leora Nix, whose job was to handle boarding operations and close-quarters combat. She had trained in zero-gravity environments where every move had to be precise, and she was known for keeping her head clear in tight spaces. She said she wanted to see the inside of whatever was calling them into the dark. The 12th and final member was Analyst Dev Rollin, a quiet figure who had no record of service in the fleet, yet whose skill in connecting hidden clues had solved 3 cold cases for the Council. He had looked at the Arcanes data and told the selection board that there was a pattern in the disappearances and that the mission might not end the way anyone expected. Together, these 12 formed the crew of Vanguard, and while alien crews often shared a single culture or training, these humans came from different paths and different lives. Yet when they stood together in the launch bay, there was no hesitation in their eyes, only the quiet readiness of those who had already made peace with the risk ahead. The days before departure passed in a blur of drills and final checks. The ship's engines roared in controlled bursts as they were tested for long travel. The navigation systems ran simulated paths through the dead system. The gunnery decks calibrated every weapon, and the medical bay stocked enough supplies for months. In deep space, the crew moved with purpose, but also with a strange lightness, as if the weight of the mission had not settled on them at all. Outside the station, alien envoys came and went, some curious, some openly doubtful. They watched the humans joke during training runs and share meals in the mess hall, as if they were preparing for a long but ordinary journey. One Zathrak warrior, watching from the observation deck, muttered to his companion that the humans either had no sense of fear or that they hid it better than any other species. The companion replied that maybe it was not fear they lacked, but the belief that fear was worth listening to. The night before launch, the crew gathered in the common room of Vanguard, where a wide window showed the stars hanging in the black beyond. The captain stood at the front, not to give a speech, but to remind them of their orders and to tell them that no matter what they found in Arcanes, they would face it together. There was no cheer, no formal oath, only the quiet sound of agreement from each crew member before they returned to their posts. In the early light of the next station cycle, the docking clamps released, and the engines of Vanguard burned bright, pushing the ship away from the orbital yard and into the open void. The hull gleamed under the sun as it turned toward the deep black beyond the known routes, and the voice of the signal continued to whisper faintly through the comm speakers, growing just a little louder with each passing hour. Across the galaxy, the Council feeds carried the launch to every world. Alien citizens gathered in stations and cities to watch the humans leave. Some called it foolish, others called it brave. But in the hearts of many, there was the same unspoken thought: if the humans could do this, then perhaps the impossible was not so impossible after all. And somewhere in the cold, forgotten shadows of the Arcanes system, the source of the signal waited silent, impatient for the newest ship to answer its call. The human ship Vanguard moved through the cold dark of space with its engines humming steady and the crew working in quiet focus. As the days passed and the stars outside began to change from the bright points of safe routes to the dim, scattered lights of the outer rim, until even the navigators on the bridge began to feel the shift in the air, though no one spoke of it aloud. The charts had shown that the border of the Arcanes system was little more than an invisible line across the void, yet as they approached it, every member of the crew could sense that they were crossing into a place that did not welcome them. The black around them seemed deeper, the cold sharper, and the distant points of light fewer and farther between, as if the system itself pushed away the warmth of the galaxy. Captain Elias stood on the bridge with his hands behind his back, his eyes fixed on the large forward display where a faint orange glow marked the dead star at the heart of the system. It was smaller than the sun of Earth and gave off no life, no heat, only a pale light that spilled across the ruined planets that drifted in slow, endless orbits around it, some broken into jagged halves, others scarred with deep lines from ancient impacts. The signal was stronger, now coming through the speakers with a clarity that made the crew glance up from their work, as if the whisper might be speaking directly to them. It was still in no known language, yet there were moments when it seemed to shape itself into words that felt almost familiar, like something half remembered from a dream. The sound carried a pull that was not loud, but constant, a presence that could not be ignored. Lieutenant Marquez sat at her station, checking the readings from the engine core, her fingers moving over the controls as she muttered about keeping the ship ready for whatever the system threw at them. Beside her navigator, Ilya Morn plotted a careful course through the drifting debris fields that hung near the system's edge, pieces of ships and broken satellites that spun slowly in the dark, some so old they were little more than twisted shadows. Pilot Arlen Drax kept his hands loose on the controls, ready to move at a moment's notice, his eyes scanning for sudden movement, while Security Officer Talia Vorn stood just behind him, her gaze locked on the forward display, like a soldier waiting for the first sign of an enemy she could not yet see. And on the comms, Ensign Cade Holloway listened intently to the signal, his brow furrowed, as if he were trying to catch a hidden rhythm beneath the whisper. The first wreck appeared on the sensors long before they could see it with their eyes, a massive shape, drifting slowly just beyond the range of the Dead Star's light. When the Vanguard moved closer, the wreck came into view, a Council warship from the Aryan fleets, its once graceful wings torn away, and its hull blackened from fire, the marks along its sides twisted in ways that no known weapon left, as if it had been crushed by an invisible hand. The crew fell silent as they passed at the lights of Vanguard, casting long shadows across the broken ship. Through the shattered windows, there was no sign of life, only empty dark spaces where crews had once worked and lived. Captain Elias gave the order to record every detail, but to keep moving, for the wreck was not the reason they had come, and the signal was still ahead of them. As they pushed deeper into the system, more wrecks appeared, drifting in the cold void like the bones of dead giants, some from species the crew recognized, and others from ships whose designs were unknown to the Council. Each one a story of a journey that had ended here, and each one a warning that none of the crew chose to speak aloud, for to give it voice might give it power. The Dead Star grew larger on the display, its pale light painting the inside of the bridge in a faint orange glow, and the planets around it turned slowly in their orbits. Like watchful eyes, one was nothing but a cracked shell with a river of frozen lava cutting across its surface. Another was covered in deep impact craters, as if it had been under siege for centuries, and between these ruined worlds the whisper of the signal pulled them forward steady and unbroken. In the observation deck, Dr. Soren Vale studied the data streaming in from the long-range scanners. The readings showed traces of energy older than any known civilization layered beneath newer signals that seemed to be coming from somewhere near the center of the system. He spoke quietly into his recorder about how the source might be hidden within the remains of an ancient structure, or perhaps inside a vessel that had survived longer than any should have. Back on the bridge, the tension grew as the ship passed through a field of debris so dense that pilot Arlen had to weave the Vanguard between spinning fragments of metal and stone some larger than the ship itself. The hull shook as small impacts rattled against the shields, and the hum of the engines deepened as Lieutenant Mara adjusted power to keep them steady. When they cleared the debris field, they found themselves facing a strange sight. A group of ships gathered together in a slow, drifting circle, none of them under power, their hulls marked by the passage of centuries. They were from different species and different times, yet all had ended up here, as if drawn to the same place and left to die. The signal was louder, now filling the air of the bridge like a breath that never ended. Security Officer Talia tightened her grip on the rail and glanced at the captain, her unspoken question clear. But Captain Elias gave no order to turn away. Instead, he told the crew to prepare for closer inspection. The navigator plotted a path through the circle of dead ships, and the Vanguard slid forward, its lights sweeping over rusted hulls and shattered decks, as if searching for a door into the past. Ensign Cade's voice broke the silence as he said that the signal was no longer just repeating, it was changing, shifting in tone and pace, as though reacting to their presence on the sensors. The sound curled through the speakers in a way that made the hair on the back of the neck rise. It was not hostile, not yet, but it was aware, and the awareness itself was enough to make every instinct scream caution. The Vanguard moved past the last of the dead ships, and there in the dark beyond them, something moved. At first, it was only a shadow against the faint light of the dead star, but then it shifted, revealing a massive shape larger than any of the wrecks, its surface smooth and black like glass, yet broken in places where faint lights flickered deep inside. It sent out another pulse of the signal, stronger, sharper, and for the first time, there was no doubt this was the source. The alien observers watching from the council feed sent urgent messages telling the humans to turn back, but on the bridge, Captain Elias only narrowed his eyes and told the crew to hold course. The Vanguard surged forward toward the dark shape, as if pulled by more than just the signal, and the whispering voice grew louder, filling every corner of the ship, as if it had finally noticed them and was waiting for them to come closer. The dark shape ahead of Vanguard hung in the empty space like a shadow, given weight, its surface black and glassy, yet scarred in deep, jagged lines that glowed faintly from within, as if something alive moved far inside the structure. The pale light of the dead star touched its edges, but could not brighten it, and the whisper of the signal had grown into a constant flow of sound that filled the air around the crew, a voice without language, yet heavy with intent. Captain Elias stood at the center of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the strange vessel or station or whatever it was. The size alone was greater than any living ship in the council fleets. The design was unlike anything in their records. No clear engines, no visible weapons, only smooth, curved walls that seemed to twist in ways that made the eyes ache if one looked too long. Ensign Cade sat at his station, listening to the changes in the signal, his hands moving quickly over the controls as he tried to map its rhythm. He reported that the pattern had shifted again, now pulsing in shorter bursts, as if it was talking directly to them, not to any receiver in the galaxy, but to Vanguard alone. He said it was not asking for help, it was giving instructions, and when the captain asked what kind, he said it was telling them where to go. Pilot Arlen slowed the ship as they neared the massive object. The outer hull of the thing began to open in silent movement, huge panels sliding apart to reveal a wide entrance like the mouth of a cavern big enough to swallow Vanguard whole. Inside, there was no light except for the faint glow of lines along the walls and the deeper flicker of shapes moving somewhere beyond sight. The crew could feel the shift in the air, the way it seemed heavier, as if gravity itself was pulling them in. Security Officer Talia ordered the gun decks to full readiness. Gunnery Chief Bryn confirmed that all weapons were armed, but his voice carried a low note of unease. The sensors showed no sign of power buildup, no shields, no weapon locks, and yet every instinct told them that they were being targeted by something unseen. Dr. Soren, in the observation deck, noted that the hull of the structure was older than any known star nation, perhaps older than the Council itself. The scars on its surface were not from battle, but from time. The ship crossed the threshold into the entrance tunnel, and the stars outside vanished, replaced by walls that curved and twisted in ways no engineer could have built. For each turn seemed to lead them deeper, without any sense of distance. The signal filled every surface, vibrating faintly under their feet, like a low hum that reached into their bones. Navigator Ilya reported that her readings no longer matched the physical movement of the ship according to the instruments they were turning in place. Yet the view outside showed forward motion. In the medbay, medic Jonas watched the heart rate monitors of the crew slowly rising. Even though none of them spoke of fear, the strange environment was working on them in ways unseen. Ray, the systems technician, reported faint surges in the power grid of Vanguard, as if something outside was brushing against their controls, not trying to take over, but learning how they worked. The entrance tunnel opened into a vast chamber, so large that it seemed impossible to fit inside the object. The walls rose in layers of smooth black metal, broken only by those faint glowing lines, and in the center of the chamber hung what looked like a sphere of light floating. Without any support, it pulsed in time with the signal, and every time it did, the crew felt a pull in their thoughts, like the moment between waking and sleep when dreams try to hold on to the mind. Ensign Cade's voice was tight as he reported that the signal was no longer coming from the entire structure. It was now all focused from the sphere. The tone had shifted again, now sharper, quicker, almost urgent. Dr. Soren looked at the readings and said that the light in the sphere was not just energy, it was data compressed in ways beyond their systems to fully decode a stream of information so dense it could carry the memory of entire civilizations. The captain listened in silence, then gave the order to move closer. The moment Vanguard shifted toward the sphere, the chamber around them came alive. The glowing lines on the walls brightened into blinding white, and shapes began to detach from the walls themselves. They were not ships in the normal sense, but machines, each one built from the same black metal as the walls, with long limbs that ended in shifting tools or weapons. Their movements were smooth and without sound, and they began to drift toward Vanguard in a slow but certain approach. Gunnery Chief Bryn locked weapons on the nearest machine and waited for the order to fire, but Captain Elias raised his hand, telling him to hold. Machines were not rushing, not attacking. They were surrounding the ship, forming a wide circle that cut off any path of retreat. Pilot Arlen tested the engines, but the controls felt heavy, as if they were pushing against invisible weight. Lieutenant Mara's voice came from the engineering station, saying that the ship's energy output was being dampened from outside, not by a direct attack, but by some field that soaked up the power like water sinking into sand. The hull was holding, the shields were holding, but their movement was slowing, and the circle of machines was closing tighter. Ensign Cade said that the signal had changed again, the tone now deeper, slower, like a heartbeat. He said it was calling something bigger than the machines, and before anyone could ask what he meant, the sphere of light in the center of the chamber began to grow, its glow spreading in waves that rolled through the air and made every metal surface in Vanguard hum. The sound was not loud, but it was inside them, filling their chests and pressing against their minds. In the council chamber far away, alien observers watched through the feed and sent more urgent calls for the humans to withdraw, their voices rising in warning that no one had ever come this close, and Liv, the captain, did not answer them, his eyes locked on the growing sphere, as if he saw something there that no one else could. The crew felt the pressure building, but they stood at their stations, their hands steady, their breaths even. The first machine reached the ship and placed one long limb against the hull. There was no sound, no impact, but lights flickered along its surface, as if it was reading Vanguard like an open book. Another machine mirrored the action on the other side, then another, until the ship was ringed in black shapes, each one connected to them like a web of quiet watchers. Ray shouted from the system's deck that external links were forming, but she was holding them back. For now. The captain gave the order to push forward despite the circle of machines. Pilot Arlen poured power into the engines, and the ship lurched ahead, breaking the tight formation. For a moment, the machines reacted, their limbs shifting into shapes that looked far more like weapons and tools, but they did not fire. Instead, they pulled back slightly, as if testing to see what the humans would do next. The sphere pulsed again, brighter than before, and the hum became a vibration that rattled through every bolt and panel of Vanguard. It was no longer a call. It was a command telling them to come closer, to surrender, to be taken as the others had been. But the humans did not slow, and in that moment the trap began to close. The walls of the chamber seemed to tremble as Vanguard forced its way forward, the glow of the sphere expanding until it filled the forward view. The black machines circling them moved with sudden speed, darting in and out like predators, testing their prey, yet still they did not strike, as if they were waiting for a signal, or perhaps for the humans to make a choice. Captain Elias stood tall, his voice calm, as he told the crew to hold their course. Pilot Arlen kept the ship steady, though the pull from the sphere grew stronger with every second. Ensign Cade reported that the signal was now weaving layers of sound, each one aimed at different members of the crew, like 100 voices speaking at once, each offering something different, promising safety, power, knowledge, and some whispers darker than that. Dr. Soren warned them not to listen too closely, for the voice was not trying to speak to their minds, but to shape them. Lieutenant Mara in engineering called out that the dampening field was still growing. She could feel the engines straining against the weight, as if the air around them had thickened into water. Ray at systems shouted that the machines were trying again to link into their mainframe, learning more with each attempt. She could block them for now, but she could not hold forever. Captain Elias gave the order to switch to manual control on key systems, cutting off points of access, even if it meant slowing their progress further. The crew felt the air grow warmer as the sphere pulsed again, this time sending a wave of light that rolled through the walls of the chamber. For a moment, they could see strange shapes moving inside, the glow shadows of structures that could not exist in normal space, towers that bent in on themselves, bridges of light that led nowhere, and a single massive shape in the center that seemed to turn toward them, though it had no face. The pressure in their minds deepened until it felt like a weight pressing behind their eyes. Gunnery Chief Brin broke the silence with a sharp report. The machines were closing in again, this time moving in perfect lines, as if forming some kind of cage. Captain Elias ordered him to fire warning shots. Brin hesitated only a moment before unleashing short bursts of plasma that lit the chamber in harsh white glare. The shots hit the space just ahead of the machines, leaving no marks on the walls, but making the machines pause, as if startled. The captain turned to Ensign Cade and asked if the signal had changed. Cade nodded slowly, saying that for the first time there was a flicker of hesitation in its rhythm, as if the voice was reassessing its prey. This was the opening they needed. Captain Elias told the crew that they were not going to run, they were going to reach the sphere and take whatever it was hiding. This mission was not about survival anymore. It was about breaking whatever had held the other species back for centuries. The crew moved with purpose now, their fear burning in a focus. Lieutenant Mara rerouted every scrap of power into the forward thrusters. Arlen pushed the engines hard, the vibrations shaking through the deck as Vanguard surged ahead. Ray launched a counterpulse through the systems, sending static back into the machine links, making them flicker and withdraw for a moment. Dr. Soren scanned the sphere again and found that the deeper shape was moving faster now, almost pacing them as they approached. As they crossed the last stretch toward the sphere, the black machines made their move. They rushed in as one, forming a tight wall in front of Vanguard, their limbs shifting into sharp edges, glowing with strange energy. Bren did not wait for orders this time. His gunners fired in unison, beams and bursts tearing through the machines at close range. Some broke apart into drifting shards, others twisted away, but more filled their place, the path closing as quickly as it opened. Captain Elias told Arlen to aim straight for the weakest point and not stop. The pilot locked onto a gap where two machines had pulled back and drove the ship forward. Vanguard slammed into the space with a shudder, the shields flaring bright, the machines scattered from the impact, spinning away into the walls of the chamber. The ship burst through into the clear space around the sphere, and for the first time, there was nothing between them and the pulsing light. The voice in the signal grew sharper, almost frantic. It no longer whispered or attempted. It commanded the crew to halt, to turn back, to surrender. Its tone like cold iron in their ears. Cade's hands flew over his console, tracing the rhythm. He said it was trying to shut down their systems by embedding commands into the very shape of the signal. He worked to scramble the pattern, sending random noise back at it. Mara warned that their power reserves were dipping into the red, but Elias told her to hold nothing back. The sphere loomed now so close that it filled the entire forward view. Its surface was not smooth, but covered in countless small shapes, each one shifting and locking like pieces of a puzzle. The glow came from deep inside, from the massive shadow that now pressed against the inner wall, its form clearer now. It was a vast construct, like a heart made of black glass, and living light, each beat sending ripples through the surface around it. Ray shouted that the machines were coming again, this time from every direction, not just the walls, but from hidden openings in the floor and ceiling. Their numbers were too great to fight head-on. Bryn fired, continuously cutting down dozens, but more took their place. The crew could feel the trap closing tight. This was the final move. Whatever was inside the sphere was about to act. Elias turned to Dr. Soren and asked what would happen if they hit the sphere with everything they had. Soren hesitated, then said that it might destroy the core of whatever this thing was, or it might trigger a chain that would take them with it. Elias smiled without humor and said that sometimes risk was the only way forward. He ordered all weapons to focus on the point where the shadow inside the sphere was closest to the surface. Bren confirmed targeting, then waited for the word. The signal screamed through the ship, a single unbroken tone that rattled every surface. The crew felt the pressure slam into them like a physical blow. Cade gritted his teeth as he forced the counter signal through, trying to keep their systems from locking up. Ray station sparked under the strain. Mara's hand was steady on the power feeds. Arlen's eyes locked on the sphere as the captain's voice cut through the noise, ordering them to fire. The first volley hit the sphere in a blinding flash. The glow flared and rippled outward as if the surface were liquid. For a moment, the entire chamber shook. The machines froze in place, as if stunned. The voice in the signal stuttered, breaking into fragments. Cade shouted that they had heard it, that it was pulling back. The captain ordered another strike. The second volley tore into the surface, and this time the ripples spread faster. The puzzle shapes on the sphere began to fall away, drifting into the air like black snow. The shadow inside writhed against the glow, its shape distorting as if it was being torn apart. The light in the chamber began to dim, the walls shivering with the strain. The machines around them twitched and collapsed, some shattering into fragments, others folding in on themselves. But the sphere was not finished. It pulsed one last time, sending a shockwave through the chamber that threw Vanguard back. The shields flared. The crew gripped their stations as the wave passed through them. The glow dimmed further, but the heart shape still moved, though slower now, weaker. Elias told the crew they were not leaving until it stopped moving for good, and with that he gave the order for every remaining shot they had to be fired at once. The chamber shook like a wounded beast as the last command left Captain Elias' lips. Bren pressed the trigger, and every weapon on Vanguard fired at the same time. The recoil shuddered through the hull as bright streams of light and heat tore into the weakening sphere. The surface twisted and peeled away like skin under fire, revealing more of the dark heart inside. The glow flared, then dimmed, then flared again, as if trying to keep its shape against the assault. The sound in the crew's ears became a roar, the signal no longer a voice, but a violent scream, each note like a blade through the mind. Cade kept the counterpulse alive, even as blood ran from his nose, his fingers steady on the console. Ray shouted that systems were overheating. She could feel the panels tremble under her hands. Mara pumped every shred of power into weapons and shields, ignoring the red warnings flashing across her station. Arlen locked the ship in position, even as the engines shook with the force of their own firing. The heart inside the sphere writhed, each beat slower than the last, like a creature drowning in deep water. The puzzle pieces that had once covered it fell in streams, now drifting weightless in the glowing air. They looked almost harmless as they passed by the viewports like dark leaves carried by a wind that did not exist. The machines in the chamber moved without order, now some spinning in slow circles, others crashing into walls as if blind the connection that had once guided them clearly. Breaking. A deep crack of light split across the heart surface. It stretched from top to bottom, glowing like molten metal. Elias saw it, and knew they were close. Bryn shifted fire to that point, each hit making the crack widen the glow inside, spilling out in waves that made the whole chamber quake. Soren warned that the energy levels were spiking far beyond anything safe. It could go critical at any moment. The captain simply said, "Then we finish before it finishes us." Another volley struck the crack, and this time it burst open. The glow rushed out like a flood, engulfing the chamber in white fire. The crew shielded their eyes. The ship's sensors screamed as readings went off scale, the heat pressing against the shields like a giant's hand. Elias gave the order to pull back. Arlen hit the reverse thrusters, but the pull from his sphere had changed. It was no longer drawing them in, but pushing them away with violent force. Vanguard drifted backward through the weightless storm of broken pieces. Ray tried to keep systems alive, while Mara fought to keep the shields from collapsing. Bryn kept his guns ready in case any machine still had fight left in it. But the machines were silent now, their black frames floating like dead husks. Cade's counterpulse finally cut out as the signal faded, and in nothing the voice that had tried to command them now gone. The crew felt the chamber around them start to tear apart. Cracks of light racing along the walls. The space itself seemed to shiver, and Ben Soren said the structure was folding on itself. It would not hold for long, Elias told Arlen, to find a path out before the whole place came down. Arlen scanned the chaos for a clear route, spotting a gap where the storm was thinnest. The captain told him to take it now. Vanguard surged forward, weaving through drifting shards of the sphere, the glow dimming behind them as the heart's beats slowed to almost nothing, each pulse weaker, until finally there was only stillness. The walls of the chamber groaned as the cracks spread wider, the glow bleeding into the emptiness beyond. Pieces of the black machines and the fallen puzzle fragments swirled around the ship as if caught in a whirlpool, pulling toward the collapsing center. As they neared the gap, an enormous wave of force rolled out from the heart's remains, slamming into Vanguard like a hammer. The crew held on as the ship spun, the inertial dampeners whining under the strain. Arlen fought the controls, wrestling the ship back into alignment. Mara shouted that shields were down to their last reserves. Ray reported that main power was failing in sectors 1 through 4. Elias told them all to hold on, they were almost clear. The gap loomed ahead, a jagged tear in space, glowing with the strange light of whatever reality lay outside this place. The edges rippled like water. Elias knew it might lead anywhere or nowhere, but staying here meant death. He ordered Arlen to push everything they had left into the engines. Mara fed the last reserves forward. The engines roared as Vanguard shot toward the tear, the glow from the collapsing chamber chasing them like the breath of a dying giant. They passed through the tear in a flash of light and were thrown into darkness for a moment. There was nothing, no stars, no space, only blackness. Then slowly the view cleared, and they saw they were in normal space again, the familiar stars steady around them. The ship drifted, the systems flickering back to life one by one. Ray let out a slow breath, saying they were clear. Mara leaned back in her chair, hands shaking from holding the power feeds. So long. Bryn powered down the weapons and finally let his shoulders drop. Cade wiped the blood from his face and checked his readings twice to be sure the signal was truly gone. Soren moved to the captain's side, saying that whatever they had faced was not a simple machine or weapon. It had been alive in some way, older than any race in the galaxy, perhaps a guardian or a prison, and now it was gone. Elias looked at the stars in silence for a moment, then told the crew to set course back to the Central Council. Their mission was complete, but their report would not be believed until it was heard in person. As Vanguard turned toward home, the crew sat in quiet reflection. They had faced something no other species had dared to approach, and they had not only survived, but destroyed it. The cost was heavy, and the memory would not fade. But the unspoken truth filled the ship. They had done what no one else could, because they were human, because when others said impossible, they simply asked, "Is that all?" Hours later, the council chamber was silent as the crew stood before the gathered leaders of dozens of worlds. The report was given in clear detail, every reading, every image, every fact. Yet some council members looked doubtful, others whispered to each other in disbelief. Elias stood firm as questions came, some demanding proof, some accusing them of reckless destruction, some asking why they had not turned back. The captain's answer was simple: because no one else would have finished the mission, and because leaving that thing alive was leaving a loaded weapon aimed at the galaxy. The debate lasted long into the night, but in the end the council could not ignore the data or the fact that Vanguard had returned at all. When every other attempt had ended in silence, the mission was marked complete. The crew given highest honors, though Elias knew the medals mattered less than the quiet nods from his people, each one knowing they had done something worth remembering. When the meeting ended and the crew walked back to their ship, the stars above the station seemed a little brighter. Perhaps it was only the relief of survival, or perhaps the absence of the sphere's unseen shadow reaching across the void. Elias looked out at them and allowed himself a rare smile, for now the galaxy was quiet. But he knew one day another impossible mission would come, and when it did, humans would once again be the ones to step forward.